Welcome to the Bros Talking Soccer podcast. My name is Dave Knittel, and on today's podcast, I'm joined by Jordan Florit, a freelance writer. I'm stumbling over my words already. That's not a great sign. A freelance writer and author of the upcoming book on Venezuelan soccer, Red Wine Arepas: How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion. Jordan, hello. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good. Thank you very much. I've been up for about 10 hours now, and 9 of those hours I've just been present on social media, answering questions, talking about the project. So it's been a long day, but it's going to be a long month.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to dig into that here. If you are watching live on YouTube, say hello, interact with us. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, I would love to hear from you. If you're watching in the future, still leave questions, comments, and all that. I'll relay them over to Jordan. And I think we're ready to jump into the podcast. Jordan, any final questions or anything like that?
No, I'm all ready. I'm really looking forward.
Yeah, me too, man. I'd like to all right. I don't know what is going on with me today. All right, let's start that one over. I'd like to welcome on Jordan Florit, a freelance writer and author of the upcoming book on Venezuelan soccer, Red Wine Arepas: How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion. Jordan, welcome to Bros Talking Soccer. How you doing today?
All good. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm really excited to chat about it today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited to have you on. And obviously, we want to dig into the book. But before we get into that, I'd like to know a little bit more about yourself. So, where are you from and kind of what's your history with the sport of soccer?
So, my history, is my camera turned off?
Yes, your camera went away there. I didn't know if we still had you. Looks like we still do.
I'll very quickly sort it out. So at least it's okay for the when it goes out retrospectively.
Okay. So stick with us here. If anyone is watching the YouTube stream, he's just grabbing something real quick, and then we'll dig right back into this. Luckily, we're getting this out of the way up front, and then we should be good from here on out.
A less than perfect start to the first live podcast.
It's all right, man. I've been stumbling over my words. I don't know what's going on with me today, so I got to slow down. Might as well get this out of the way up front, right?
I'm back.
All right, he's back. Okay, cool. So I'll just reframe my question, and then we'll get into it. All right.
Perfect.
So I definitely want to talk about your book and everything kind of associated with that. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your history of, involvement in the sport of soccer or football?
Yeah, so I've been playing for as long as I can remember. My dad was an incredibly active football player when I was young. He used to take me along to the games at the weekend, the games he was playing. And, I was there to watch, really. It was just me and my dad. So I was just on the touchline, just kicking a ball around, watching him, but mainly just playing around myself. I remember going down to the park with my dad, and it would just be me and him versus 4 or 5 older kids. And, I sort of learned playing football that way. I now play on the wing. I'm a very fast player. That's my best aspect, really. And I've always enjoyed dribbling, which I had to pick up, when I was very young to get along against older boys. So in terms of playing football, it really was because of my dad. He's my first footballing hero. Took me to my first game, Southampton, at our old stadium, the Dell. It was a really old stadium, and that was replaced in 2001, 2002, I think. And we've been at St Mary's since. And it wasn't really until I was about 14, 15 that I could afford a season ticket to go to every game. So my dad would just take me a few times a season, and then it actually took us to be relegated 2 divisions down from the Premier League to League One for me to be able to afford to go. Football in England is incredibly expensive, and you compare it to the rest of Europe, where I know when I go on holiday, kits are expensive on the continent. A Barcelona shirt is €100. I know my dad was in Paris last year, and he messaged me saying, a shirt here is €90. Are you sure you want one? And I was like, no, not paying that. So the kits in England are cheaper, but still expensive. But in Europe, going to a game is cheap, but kits are expensive. In England, going to a game is really expensive. Kit's not so much. So my football history really is really based around like community and family. It's the thing that has me and my dad closest. It's like the core to our relationship, really. And then my local club, Southampton. Even though I now live in London, like I go to as many away games as possible with a really good bunch of guys. And it's my weekend. When I was in my late teens, a Saturday would be playing in the morning, going home, quick shower, then going to the stadium to watch. And I was lucky enough to be a ball boy for 4 years. So I was there from League One Championship and then 2 seasons in the Premier League. And it was like the best Saturdays of my life, really.
Very cool. So you're a Southampton fan. How are you feeling about the upcoming season?
I'm really confident and positive, and that's the first time I've been able to say that since Ronald Koeman left. And that was quite some time ago now. So it's a fresh feeling. I sort of fell out of love a bit with the team. Like I didn't fall out of love with the club at all. Like the club means a lot to me, and the club is more than just what's on the pitch. Whereas the team, I lost a lot of love for over the past few years. And we made poor decisions in the terms of the managers we brought in, the style of play that we were trying to use wasn't what our players that have come through the youth academy were used to, what they were trained in. And when we went from Nigel Adkins to Pochettino, that was a natural transition. Obviously, Pochettino now at Tottenham is playing some of the best football in England, even though it's yet to bring them like big rewards. Like they're incredibly attractive to watch. And then we went from Pochettino to Koeman, and we still got the results. But a lot of fans, because we were still getting the results, didn't realise that actually we'd broken away from how we normally play our football. We dropped a lot deeper. We were used to playing a high press. And under Koeman, we did sit back, and we were very reliant on Sadio Mane, who's now at Liverpool, and Shane Long, who's still at Southampton, to really get us up the pitch quickly. And then they played off Graziano Pella, really strong central forward that we brought in from the Eredivisie, and now he's in China, the Italian centre forward. So we did really change under Koeman, and then that continued furthermore when we went to Claude Puel and Pellegrino. So it's the first time in years that I've been excited. I think we've brought in a manager in Ralph Hasenhüttl who's a natural fit for the way that we really play football from the academy up. So for the first time, I'm feeling positive.
And positive, does that mean, are you expecting, like top half of the table? What's positive from a Southampton perspective for you?
I think a realistic ambition is to try and finish in between 10th and 12th. I know the most ambitious Saints fans that is verging on that unrealistic. We want a top half finish, but when we got our top half finishes a few seasons ago, when we finished 6th and 7th under Koeman, that did take a few weak teams for us to be that high. Like Chelsea had that awful season. Manchester United were in transition with Moyes and Van Gaal. Like they've not really recovered from that yet. So it did take a few duff performances from some big teams for us to get that high. And now you've got Wolves, who have had another brilliant window. They're going to be there. Everton, at the moment, I don't think you can definitely know what you're going to get from Everton. Their transfer policy seems to have no particular strategy to it. So it could go great. It could flop. You don't know. Leicester are another team. I think they're going to do really well this season. I really like Rodgers as a manager. He's a bit of a caricature in England. He gets taken the mick out of regularly, but I think he's a great manager, and I think he's a bonus to the league. So I think the teams outside the top 7, Everton and Wolves and Leicester, are going to be, I think, a step ahead of Southampton still. But I am positive, and for the first time in a few years, I don't think we need to remotely worry about relegation.
All right, yeah, and I've always had a soft spot for Southampton. So I'm a Liverpool supporter. That's my team from England, and I wanted to last Southampton question for you. I wanted to get your opinion on just that relationship between Liverpool and Southampton, where it seemed like almost for 5 straight years Liverpool was taking a lot of Southampton's best players. Do you have animosity towards Liverpool because of that? What are your feelings, with that relationship where it felt like you were losing a lot of your good players to Liverpool? I mean, you were being compensated, but are you okay with that, or is that something that's frustrating?
I think what a lot of fans were upset with was sort of like the manner in which the moves happened. Like we had Lallana, who only on only today on Twitter, a lot of Saints fans were debating what he could have achieved and the status at the club he would have received if he stayed with us all his career. Because at times he was saying like he wants to stay for his whole career, be the Matthew Letizia of this generation. So I think it was the way in which players left that sort of left a sour taste. Lallana having been, such a pivotal part of our rises up and also the club captain, very sourly left. He got a very short goodbye message from the club because Lallana handled it very badly on an individual level. Like he handed in a transfer request and he left in a very sharp way. And then Dejan Lovren, again, he was making comments when he was still a contracted Southampton player saying like, my heart, my head is already in Liverpool. Like when he was still a Southampton player. And, he came with a reputation. There's a reason he only cost us 8 million from Lyon. And that's because, he is a very arrogant person. And on a personal level, as just a little anecdote, when Lovren was at Southampton, he stayed at the Grand de Vere Hotel in the city centre. And at the time, my now wife was working there. And he came down for dinner one day, but you had to book. It was a popular hotel at the time. And so my wife turned him away, saying there are no tables. And he was like, no, there'll be a table for me. Like you can make space. And she didn't know who he was. So she was like, no, there's not a table for you. I'm really sorry. And he literally said, go and get the manager. Like there will be space for me. And that's just, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Like you are abusing the situation you're in. So Lallana and Lovren left on bad terms. And then for me, I don't know how many Saints fans agree, but I think Liverpool really exploited Ricky Lambert's love for the club when they signed him. And, he was desperate to move to Liverpool. And that's one player that left Southampton that nobody begrudged making that choice. But I really think he was used as like a pull for Liverpool to then sign other players. Like, they then took Nathaniel Klein, who had played with Ricky Lambert as well. And I think he was sort of used as an enticement to bring other players to the club. And then with Van Dijk, obviously we got good money for him. But again, there was the whole him and Klopp meeting up privately. It was very underhand. So I don't particularly care about Liverpool. Like I don't have any animosity towards them. I don't care. I'm indifferent really.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. I was always interested. I don't get to chat with too many Southampton fans, so wanted to take that opportunity to ask the question. So let's get into your book. And so before we talk about that, we talked a little bit about your soccer fandom, football fandom. What's your history with journalism, writing, and things like that? Have you worked on other projects? What's maybe some of your favorite projects that you've worked on prior to getting into the book?
Sure. So I started, I've always written to begin with, but I started writing online for outlets when I was 16. It was the summer between school and college. And at the very beginning of the summer, with like the pre-season ahead of me in terms of football, I broke my collarbone. And so I then wasn't going to be able to play football all summer, which was like a nightmare for me because all day, every day would have just been down the park with my mates playing football. So I had to occupy myself, and I've always enjoyed writing. It's something that I excelled in at school. So I decided to start a football blog, and I kept that up for 2 years. And for those 2 years, I literally turned out 5 articles a week, like every weekday, with the exception of Wednesday. And then on a Saturday, I'd write an article, and I kept that up for 2 years. The first website I wrote for was This Is Football. I wrote for them for a long while. I don't know how they're doing these days, but the editor took a gamble on me. Like I was just a kid. I'd not been published before, and that went really well. Like in the end, he sort of let me bypass him as an editor and just gave me access to like WordPress, and I published things directly, and he sort of gave me a free rein. And then when I was 18 and went to university, I had a lot less time. When you're writing for no money, like when you're not getting paid for your writing, like it is a strain to do it on top of a full-time job and education. And I did go straight into full-time work. So there was a few years where I wasn't writing as much, just because, the pressures of everyday life got in the way. But it's something that I miss doing, and it does really help me in life. Like it's my creative outlet. I rely on it. as a way of getting rid of energy, giving my opinion. And also, like, I'm a massive reader myself, and I like writing about things that I learn. I like writing about things that, that other people aren't writing about. I'd never feel inclined to write about transfer gossip or rumours, or I don't really even have an interest in writing about how Southampton did at the weekend, for example. Certainly not in the conventional match report kind of setting. So when I came back into writing again, I really wanted to sort of do things on my terms, and I was lucky enough to find a few editors that were more than willing to accommodate me. One is JS Leatherbarrow at Football in the City.
Yep, we've
He's
had him
great.
on
Yeah, he's
multiple
great.
times.
He was really supportive, sort of allowed me to do what I want, but with, a bit of guidance. He's a great graphic designer. The way he composes and puts together pieces really, complemented what I wanted to do in terms of my writing. And aside from football, in 2017, I spent a bit of time writing for Telesur, which was set up by Hugo Chavez, the former Venezuelan president. I don't know exactly the year that it was set up, but he, in his own words, said that it was to be the Latin American alternative to CNN. And it has no qualms over being a socialist news outlet, but they hired me to work for Telesur English, their English language network. So I wasn't writing on Latin American politics. I was writing about things that were going on in England. I was writing about historical things in Latin America, like history, non-political pieces. And I really enjoyed doing that because when I write about football, I really do try and write about the community side of it, the culture, like that. The anthropological side of football is what interests me. So I've been writing now for 9 years online, with a bit of time out here and there. But I've always written. I really enjoy it. Football and writing are my two passions in life, really.
Very cool. And so 2017, you said that's when you started writing for the Venezuelan outlet. Is that what led you into looking more into Venezuelan soccer? Was that sort of the gateway, 2017, or when did you kind of start to take an interest in Venezuelan soccer?
So 2017 was the year in which I started to take more interest in Venezuelan soccer, and that was not really because I was writing for Telesur, but more the performance of the under-20s at the World Cup in 2017. I started watching that more as the tournament went on because England were doing well. And obviously England came up against Venezuela in the final. England won 1-0, but it could have been very different. Venezuela had a penalty saved. Peñaranda, who plays for Watford, he was the one that had his penalty saved by Freddie Woodman. And, that game, Jefferson Soteldo was just insane, like so good. He reminds me a lot of Ronaldinho, who's a player I admired massively growing up. There was a goal at the weekend for Santos that he assisted. I don't know if you've seen the video snippet, but like his ball control coming down the wing and cutting into the box is just like mesmerizing. Like he is taking the piss out of the defenders, and like you can't help but just smile when you watch it. Like it's insane. So 2017 was when I first started writing about Venezuela, but not necessarily about the football. It was only this year in March that I started writing about the football. But I've been reading about Venezuela and Latin American countries since about 2012. I read a lot, and my dad's side of the family is Spanish. So I've always had an interest in the Spanish-speaking world, and that sort of intensified because my granddad died when I was young, and I lost connection with that side of my family because my parents were divorced. And I've always had a pull to Latin American football just because I think it started when I was a kid. It was just because it was different. Like I've never been interested in, when you play FIFA or Pro Evo, I had no interest in being the same team as everyone else was being. So like I picked teams that other people weren't. I remember on FIFA 2013, my ultimate team was MLS players and the US national team, purely because other people weren't doing it. So the players were cheaper, but there's so many like quick and strong players in the MLS as well. And I just really enjoyed getting to like Div 2, Div 1, and just like murdering teams that just had Loic Remy and Lukaku up front. And I was beating them with like players that I can't even remember the names of, but like Apara was great. DeMarcus Beasley that year, Henry and Defoe were still in the MLS. But like it was the defenders, really, like the left and right backs, who were just like absolutely rapid. And they were players that people didn't know anything about, so they weren't expecting anything. So I got into Latin American football just because it was different, basically. But then as I got older, I sort of as I started reading about the history and the culture of the continent, I was just working my way through the countries in the continent with no particular order. And when I got to Venezuela, all the books were on Hugo Chavez, the revolution, and Simon Bolivar. And I read them all. I was really interested in them. They're great books. The biography on Simon Bolivar by Maria Arana, a Peruvian author, is like a great book. Like, massively recommend it. And I'm happy to read things from like every part of the political spectrum. Like, I always try and approach things in a very objective manner. I don't think there's any value whatsoever in only reading left-wing stuff or only reading right-wing stuff. I don't think you can understand society unless you understand both sides. Like, even if you're a left-winger or a right-winger and you're never going to like be swayed to the other side, like, I think it's massively important to like understand it, even if you approach it cynically as like understanding your enemy. I just think it's vital to understand society. You need to understand everyone. Otherwise, I think you lose so much nicheness in society. So I think Venezuela is something at present we only see in one way. Like, the conversation on Venezuela is politics, and that's all. And especially like in the US and in England, the conversation is incredibly negative. And I'm not saying that's inaccurate at all, but there is only one way of viewing the country. And there are other things going on in the country that are positives to take. And I think football is one of them, because I feel so passionately that football is such a essential tool to view societies where it's prominent. I've been really drawn to that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, just circling back on the Venezuelan U20 team, I think, if I remember correctly, they knocked out the US team at that World Cup. And so I remember watching them and being really impressed. I think they had a really good keeper, and just a lot of their players were really good. And, I have limited knowledge of Venezuela, but my knowledge from a sporting sense is that baseball has predominantly been the major sport there. And it seems like the tide is kind of changing a little bit. We have Joseph Martinez playing in MLS. I know Salomon Rondon, Yangel Herrera, who's a Man City product. They have a lot of players that are coming up, and I think they have a realistic chance of qualifying for the 2022 World Cup. Can you share any details about why kind of the tide is changing from baseball to football or soccer, or are you saving all that for the book?
No, not at all. I'm quite happy to say it. And between what I say now and by the time I finish the book, like, my opinion might change slightly. But at this moment, how I feel about it is, especially considering the state of the country, I think football is unparalleled when it comes to a representation of a country on a global stage. Like, I know baseball has its international competitions, although not many countries take part, and you've got the World Series in the US. Like, they are big competitions, but I don't think anything comes close, be it in sport or any other sphere, that gives the representation that football does. And I think because of how the country is politically very divided, when it comes to the economy, again, very divided, there's no middle ground. Football brings everyone together. People don't forget that the country is the way it is, but people from any persuasion get behind the national team. And with football, I think that's amplified. I think the only thing that comes close is the Olympics. And I think World Cup 2022 is so important to Venezuelan society and the unity of the everyday people. Like, forget the government, forget the people that run the country, the people that live every day on the streets of Venezuela, just the ordinary person, having a representation on the global stage that isn't dictated by how the country's viewed in terms of finance, in terms of politics, in terms of foreign policy and home policy, is so important to a people. And I think that's why the World Cup has so much importance to them. Obviously, the football is important, but I think what is happening off the pitch, like, massively emphasizes that importance of football. At the end of the day, like, when America do badly when it comes to soccer, like, that hurts. Like, Americans that are interested in soccer, it hurts
Yep.
the country. Like, it is a status to be at a continental tournament or an international tournament, and it's almost like a form of legitimacy. Like, if Venezuela can qualify for World Cup 2022, it gives the country, the people, legitimacy. Like, the government might try and piggyback that legitimacy, but that's not unique to Venezuela. I think football is inherently political. You only have to see when Venezuela have done well recently, Maduro tweets support, and so does Guaido. Like, that's not unique to Venezuela. But as much as football is political for the people, more often than not, it's not like it is. I know I'm saying football is more than just a game, but when it comes to international tournaments and on the pitch, like, it distills into just a game because it's giving people representation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very well said. And so we're recording this on Wednesday, July 31st. I believe your Kickstarter started today. Can you tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the reason I'm doing a Kickstarter for the book is I was offered a publishing deal, like a conventional publishing deal. I sent off a pitch to a publisher who accepted it and they were enthusiastic about doing it. They offered me a run of 1,000 books. They gave me a deal, or they set out terms for a deal. Nothing was ever signed or anything, but they set out the terms for the deal that they were offering to me. And I spoke to a few authors that have been published, and some people described it as like a good deal, and other people described it as the going rate. It was what I could expect, kind of thing. But end of the day, it wasn't right for me or the book. Like, this Kickstarter is going to be run as a not for profit campaign. Like, I want to put that out there now. Like, every single penny raised from this book will go into the printing, the publishing, and the production of the book. Like, I will not be taking any profit from this. And I came to the decision to run a Kickstarter mainly because of money aspects. And what that is that the maths boiled down to, in this publishing deal, that per copy sold, the publisher would make about £5.90, which is about $6.50 per copy sold, but after tax. And I would make 65p, which is probably 80 cents per book before tax. So if all 1,000 books sold, the publisher would have made about $6,000, and I would have made about $650. And I was like, well, who's written the book here? And secondly, like, for me, that's a lot of exploitation. I'd much rather that £5.90 per copy sold go into the production of the book, instead of being like a publisher's pure profit. So I decided to run a Kickstarter to publish this book. And that for me meant doing a lot of things in reverse. It meant that I needed a more concrete plan than if I was publishing, to persuade people to get behind this project. At the end of the day, I'm more than aware that I am selling people a book that I haven't written yet. And that takes some persuading. And that's only natural. That's right. Like, why would you buy a product that doesn't exist yet unless you could believe in it? So I needed to arrange lots of interviews, have things that are concrete, that are definitely going to happen. And I've been really fortunate that I've been able to do that. Like, it has been a lot of hard work, but I have had doors open to me that I did not expect to happen. So the Kickstarter is really vital to get this project off the ground. Kickstarter funding is all or nothing. So I have a target of £5,000. I don't know exactly what that is in dollars, but it equates to roughly 260 copies of the book sold. If I don't hit my target, I don't get any of the money at all. Everyone keeps their money. So no one loses out if the book isn't funded. It's just the book won't be produced. So it's really important that I hit that target so I can go ahead and write the book. And it means doing this Kickstarter, it is essentially self-publishing. I'm not ruling out that I'll go with a conventional publisher in the future, but I am self-publishing it, and that gives me a lot of creative freedom to do what I want with this book. For people that aren't familiar with Kickstarter, it is to bring creative products to life. So I've been able to be really innovative and imaginative with the reward system that I have in place. So throughout the book, which is going to take about 10 months to write, one of the options is to keep up to date with it with a writer's diary and a photo diary. So when I'm in Venezuela, shooting interviews, there will be exclusive photo snippets, video snippets. It will be a 10-month writer's diary, behind the scenes, how a book is put together. Another reward tier is alongside the book, having your own opinion piece included in the published book. So you can have your own 500 to 1,000 word opinion piece included in the book. And then the top reward system is all of that's come before it, plus a signed Venezuela shirt with everyone that I interview face to face. So as I go through writing the book, players that I'm going to be interviewing in England and Venezuela, and if I'm fortunate enough to go to other countries to conduct interviews, then everyone I interview face to face will be signing this shirt. And there's a few of them available as well. And these are things that you wouldn't get in a conventional published book. And another thing that I'm doing, which I think is really important, is everyone that backs the project and buys a copy of the book will have their name included in the artwork of the book. There's a really good artist. I'll send you a link to his art afterwards. But he creates imagery out of names. So, for example, there could be a portrait of Rondon celebrating a goal, and the image would be composed of everyone's name that's contributed. Because this project wouldn't be possible without the people that are backing it. Today's gone quite well. At the beginning of this podcast, the project is already 33% funded. So I've got a target of £5,000, and I had raised £1,700 going into this podcast on day one. There's another 34 days to go. So it's really important that this early momentum stays and builds. I want this project to work. I think I've got a lot of good things going on to write this book, almost to the point where I think it would be a shame if I can't fulfill this project, because so many Venezuelans in all aspects of the game are really willing and engaging.
Yeah. And so for those who are either, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening to the podcast, we have the Kickstarter linked in the video description or podcast show notes. So definitely check it out and support Jordan in this journey, because it's going to be awesome. And I'm really curious to see how all of this turns out. And, I'm definitely going to support as well. Jordan, you touched on a 10-month timeline. How do you envision it all working out? I believe you're going to Venezuela for interviews in October, and then basically after that, are you going to just start churning out stuff? Do you already have an outline? How do you envision these next 10 months playing out?
So I've already set up a fair amount of interviews and meetings with people. I've been fortunate enough that some, you could say, influential or powerful or well-connected people in Venezuelan football have already got behind the project, and they've really enabled me to do things that maybe I didn't think was possible. I sort of had the expectation that I'd sort of write this book from like an outsider's point of view, whereas the people that have been able to help and want to help means that I probably end up producing a book where I'm very much like immersed with the people that are talking to me. The interviews will be face to face. I'm not going to censor opinion at all, whether it comes from the far left or far right or the middle. Everything that is in the book will be uncensored. Obviously, I will ensure factual accuracy. Like if somebody makes a claim, I'll make sure it's factually correct. But in terms of opinion, I won't censor it. So the book really is going to encompass Venezuelan society as a whole. There will be ugly bits, like I have no doubt about that at all. And there will be bits that, inherently that come along with football will be beautiful. And in terms of the structure of the book, it will be between 20 and 40 chapters. I aim for about a 350-page book. And a lot of interviews that I've already set up will form those chapters. But there are people willing to help and provide other contacts for interviews. So I already have a number of domestic and international players. I'm in the process of securing more interviews. There's people that are waiting to see how this project goes before committing. It's only today that some people have offered help because they've seen how people have responded to the Kickstarter. So it really is backing itself in a way. Like the more people get involved, the more convinced professional people are to get involved with the project. At the end of the day, I'm someone they've never heard of, approaching them by email or on Twitter saying, I'm writing a book, please help me. I'm not a writer for the Guardian or the Telegraph or the Independent. Like I have a vast portfolio online, but at the end of the day, I am a nobody. Like, why would you help me, kind of thing. But they have overwhelmingly been really helpful. So the structure of the book has some flexibility. Like with the Kickstarter, I'm really open to feedback and ideas. If people want something in particular addressing, like I will do my best to do that. I had a lot of people come to me in the pre-launch saying like, I left Venezuela when I was 8 years old. Like there are things that I want answering, like you can do this. Almost like he was saying like, you don't understand what you could do for Venezuelans that haven't been in the country for so long. Like you're going to be able to give them answers to things that they've not been able to get for themselves, kind of thing. And I do feel that responsibility. So I want this book to really be driven by the people that support it. That's not to say I don't have a plan in place at all, because I really do, and that was essential for the Kickstarter to have any legitimacy. So I envisage it being 10 months long. I can stick to that. Like I know what that entails on a week-to-week basis. I'm going to be keeping everyone updated on the progress of how it's going, and I'm really excited for it.
What do you anticipate your biggest challenge along this journey is going to be?
So I'd like to think that the biggest challenge, other than raising the sufficient funds through the Kickstarter, which obviously is a massive challenge, but I think the biggest challenge was deciding to do it in the first place. Quite a few people that I spoke to early on discouraged me from going to Venezuela. One Venezuelan that lives in Caracas, he told me not to come. He said, if you want to write a book on Venezuelan football, do it from home. Like, it's not worth the risk to your safety or your security to come out here. Like, I have a 6-month-old daughter. I've been married 2 years on Sunday. He said, like, you're 25, don't come. It's not worth the risk. And another guy who now works in America, he was in Caracas for 7 years as an investigative journalist. And he said to me, like, it's worse than Mosul and Kabul. Like, you don't want to go there. Don't do it. So those two people, they weren't trying to put me off. There was no maliciousness to it. It was honest advice. And then I had a overwhelming consensus was, you live in London, I live in London. So like, you live in London, you know how to keep yourself safe. You know what you should and shouldn't do at the weekends when it's dark on a night out. Treat Caracas the same, take precautions, basically don't be an idiot, was the general advice. They didn't play down that Caracas can be dangerous. It's the capital. But I do live in London. There's 7,000 robberies a month in London. Like there's 4,000 muggings on the street. But I feel safe in London because, I don't put myself in those situations. So I think the biggest challenge was committing to doing it. I was never going to write this book without going to Venezuela. Like if I didn't think I could, I just wouldn't have written the book. But I've been fortunate enough to be really reassured about my safety and plans when I'm out there. The executive president of the Venezuelan Football League, a guy called Ruben Villavicencio, he has been great. Like when I told him about being warned not to come, he rang me up and spent half an hour on the phone to me, just saying, you'll be fine. He explained the situation to me. He didn't put me under any false pretenses. Like he was brutally honest with the situation in Venezuela. But he did give me a lot of reassurance, and that was really warming. Like at the end of the day, he is a very busy man. He's important in terms of the development of professional football, and there he is ringing me up on WhatsApp, spending half an hour on the phone out of his working day to encourage me to go ahead with this project. So I think the biggest challenge was committing to do it. I still, I'm not naive, but I am trying to stay positive about my time in Venezuela because I think it will be okay. But people in Venezuela and some members of my family are you're a bit crazy for doing this. But I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's inspiring and it's really cool, and we're excited to hear, how everything goes. Real quick, happy anniversary, prematurely. So congrats on 2 years and congrats on the daughter. Switching gears onto the more positive side, I mean, what's the thing you're really looking forward to over these next 10 months? What's the thing you're most excited about?
So obviously getting to meet important people in football is going to be exciting. Hopefully I get to meet Yangel Herrera. Hopefully in one way or another, even if it's not in person, I'll be talking to Soteldo and Martinez. But then there are players that I'm meeting plenty of players in the flesh. Hopefully the ones based in England remain in England. Like Peñaranda's future is currently uncertain, like if he will stay in Watford or not. But I'm hoping to meet him. And there's plenty of domestic-based players that I will be meeting, and a few of the past international managers. I'm waiting on confirmation to meet them. So that's that's exciting. That's a pull for a lot of people to support the project. But I'm interested in spending time with a few just ordinary fans, really. So I've arranged to go to some games when I'm out there. I'm going for about 2.5 weeks. I've arranged to go to some games with the Caracas Ultras. They're called Los Demonios Rojos, the Red Devils. At the weekend, they unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, had Caracas's game postponed. They went with a protest about how the club's being managed. They clashed with police, and the game ended up being postponed. But you know, they also do a lot of good work. Like if you follow them on Twitter, they're active in the community and society. So I'm really looking forward to spending time with them, the match day experience, but also, you know, seeing what they do away from the football. I'm really looking forward to just meeting people and spending 2 weeks in Venezuela. Like, I don't think that you can really appreciate anything without being immersed in it. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. I'm really excited about how the Kickstarter project is going to be so different from a conventional book as well. It's going to be like a 10-month, writing a book would be a 10-month commitment, but like a 10-month commitment to keeping everyone involved in the project. I'm really looking forward to. Like at the end of the day, I want to be a full-time writer, and this sort of, in a way, this book is a chance for me to like prove myself in a very public way. Like, you know, if I fail, it's a very public failure, and I feel that pressure, but it's something that motivates me to do well. Like, I don't doubt my ability as a writer. I'm passionate about it. I've been doing it for a long time, and I know I approach things differently to most writers. So I'm really excited to have the support of people that are backing it. At the end of the day, if I don't reach my target, like, you know, it's because there wasn't a market for it and I've not sold it well enough. So I'll be doing my best to make it a reality.
Yeah, it's very inspirational. I commend you so much for, you know, having the balls to go for it and all of that. And I really hope it's going to come to fruition. Everything we can do in our power, you know, to help you out, we will be doing that. And, you know, I have a good feeling and I think it will come true. So I'm hopeful and all of that. What are your goals for the book? So 10 months from now, you know, you're done writing it, you get it out there. Do you have any hard goals on like, we want this number sold? Do you want people to leave after reading, feeling a certain way? Do you have any goals like that? Or are you just more looking forward to the process and then just leaving it open-ended?
Yeah, I have some goals. How you ended your question is a element of the book that I'm excited about and something that I want to stay true to. Like, I don't have a predetermined agenda, and I think that's important with what I'm trying to do with this book, because I think if you write a book with a predetermined agenda on Venezuela, it's going to be very obvious very quickly. I don't imagine that this book will have much of my personal opinion, because that's not what's important about this book. It's very important to me that people have their say. Like I said earlier, that doesn't matter for me whether it comes from the far left, the far right, anywhere in between. As long as it's factually sound, I will not be censoring opinion at all. In terms of goals that I have, obviously for the Kickstarter to succeed, based purely on book sales, like if every backer was a book sale, I need to make 260 sales. As long as I make the target of 5,000, like, there will be a run of books produced. Like, that is under no doubt whatsoever. So if the Kickstarter is successful, like, everyone that has backed it at book level will get a book. Like, that's fixed, that's guaranteed. But when the book is halfway through, I imagine I will start selling it on pre-order to the general public as well. People that are backing it through the Kickstarter will get an exclusive experience and a exclusive product at the end of the day. Like, they're going to be in the book. They got the chance to be in the artwork of the book, have their own article if they so wish in the book. There's only 10 of those slots available. One is already gone, but like, the opportunity is there. And there will be exclusive chapters that won't be in the public run. There'll be exclusive chapters to the Kickstarter version of the book only. I've had 3 covers made up. The cover that will be on the Kickstarter book will be unique to the Kickstarter book. The general public run will be one of the remaining 2. So people involved in the Kickstarter will have quite a bit of almost editorial say through polls and surveys of at least the aesthetics of the book. And I'm really excited about that. And when it comes to any other goals that I've got, I don't aim to change the conversation on Venezuela. I don't think I could do that. It would be unrealistic. I don't want to do that. I just want to provide people that are reading the book with another way of learning about Venezuela. At the moment, like I said at the beginning, the conversation is one dimensional. It is politics. That's the only narrative. And I want to add to that. I think the best thing that could come from this book, other than making people aware of the potential of Venezuela, a country of over 30 million people that have yet to qualify for a World Cup, have never won the Copa America, making people aware of that, but also hopefully when they've read the book, their first thought when somebody says Venezuela isn't oil, isn't financial crisis, isn't political division, it will be Salomon Rondon or Jefferson Soteldo or Lovina Tinto. Like, that's what I hope to have from this book.
Yeah, very cool. And, I hope for that as well. Last question on the book, just tie a little bow on things. The title is Red Wine Arepas, How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion. Where does that name, kind of come from? Did you come up with that? Did you, can you explain that title a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So I had the subtitle before I had the title. I was in two minds about the subtitle. It was either going to be How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion, which is what I settled on, or it was going to be How Football Became Venezuela's Religion. I think it's not there yet. It's not eclipsed baseball, but I think it will. I think if they qualify for Qatar, it will be then. And if it isn't, I think it is definitely going to happen in the future. And so that's where the religious aspect came from it. It's something that everyone in Venezuela can get behind. Like, it eclipses whether you're on the left or the right of the political divide. It eclipses money, whether you're rich or poor. Like, it eclipses all that. It will become a religion like it is in many countries around the world. So I think that's where it came around for football being the religion of the country. Like, there's a famous saying, like, football is the opium of the religion is the opium of the masses, and then somebody sort of bastardized that saying to say that it was football. So that is already that aspect. Albert Camus, the French philosopher, said that everything he knows of morality he learned through football. So that was the subtitle, and then I gained the title from that. So obviously the connotations of it becoming a religion. The international team are called La Vino Tinto, which transliterates as the red wine, and arepas is like a staple part of the Venezuelan diet. It's a corn flour type product, sort of like a bread that you stuff full of ingredients. So you've got like red wine and bread, like the religious connotations of bread and wine, and that's how it all tied together.
Very cool. I love it, man. So I love stuff like that where, it looks on the surface just like, oh, these things are a part of Venezuelan culture. But really, when you dig down underneath it, I mean, it all ties together. And so that was really cool to hear how that came about. So is there anything, before I ask my final question, is there anything we didn't talk about today? Anything that you wanted to mention or that we didn't get into?
There's undoubtedly things that we've not covered today, but I think I've been fairly comprehensive in what I want to achieve from this and what I've done so far. Like, you've asked some really open-ended questions that's allowed me to talk about all that I've been doing. I just want to assure people that I'm working really hard on this, like long hours. My wife is bored of it already. When I started out in the first few weeks, I think she thought it was an idea that would come and pass, almost like, he'll be into this for a few weeks and then he'll lose interest. And maybe she was just waiting for that to happen. And then it sort of came to a head. We sort of had a bit of an argument in the kitchen. And I was like, look, I'm passionate about this. I want to do it. Like, my career is hopefully going to be in writing. This is what I want to do. And I think it almost took that argument for her to see how passionate I am about this. And since then, like, she's been 100% behind me. Like, obviously when it gets to 8 p.m. and I tell her that I'm now going to do a podcast, maybe I wasn't clear enough in telling her this was happening. Like, she was making dinner and I messaged you 10 minutes before the podcast, like, can you give me an extra 10 minutes? Like, my wife's just making dinner. So she's been really, really patient with me, and at the end of the day, she does know how important this is to me, and she is being incredibly supportive. But like, I'm just so buzzed for this.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to have a significant other who is supportive, and there are challenges that naturally come along with it. I do this a lot, and I have a wife who's incredibly supportive as well. So I can relate to probably a lot of what you're going through. So the last question that I ask all my guests, and we touched on this a little bit, but it's a little bit more open ended. But I always ask people, what's the thing they're most excited about happening in their soccer world? We touched on what you're excited about for the book, and you can go that direction if you'd like, but just more open ended. What's the thing you're most excited about? It could be Southampton related, could be something else, but what's the thing you're most excited about happening in your soccer world?
It is the book, like it really is. Obviously, I've not been this confident, or I haven't looked forward to a football season as much as I'm looking forward to this one for Southampton in a few years. But I have sort of fallen a bit out of love with the Premier League in particular. I At the moment, like the international competitions, like the ICC, like it doesn't. I think it's ridiculous, really. Like it's all about branding and marketing. Like I know it does give, and I appreciate it does give Americans that support English clubs like yourself. You support Liverpool. Like I know it does give you an opportunity to maybe see them live in the flesh that otherwise you wouldn't have. And same for fans in like Singapore and Japan and China and India. Like Southampton played a friendly in Macau last week. We have fans out there, like who knew, kind of thing. Like, and I do appreciate that side of it. But what I don't appreciate is, they're trying to make it seem like it's an altruistic endeavor when it's not. It's not. It is all about money. I know you do get to see your team, and I do genuinely. I'm genuinely pleased for you that you do get to see your team. Like, don't think that I'm not. But I just think the more the game is commodified and commercialized, sort of I lose a bit of love for it. Whereas I think Venezuela still has a very raw experience with their football. And when I was talking to you about what I think qualification for the World Cup means to the country being so much more than football, I think we've lost a lot of that. And when football in England does become something more than just a game, then we've seen that with Raheem Sterling over the past 18 months. Like he's transcended just being a football player. He's like a proxy ambassador for equality, race relations, representation in the media, and he overcame so much to become that. But there's sort of still a attitude that prevails that like you're a footballer, stay in your box, like just play football, and I think that's a shame. When Gareth Southgate picked his World Cup squad for 2018, like he said in November that some of his thinking was to pick an England team that was representative of society. Like Lingard's a good player, but the way the club was, the way the senior squad was put together, just using Lingard as an example, he did want to make a team that was representative of society. So you could think like maybe that team was put together as a reflection of society. Maybe players wouldn't have been in that team otherwise. Like he did say he felt a responsibility to sort of fight some of the prevailing attitudes that Brexit really brought to the surface. I don't know how much you're aware of it, but like by and large, Brexit hasn't been something that has infiltrated football, and I think that's a good thing. There was comments from Neil Warnock, the Cardiff manager, who he was fairly like ignorant in his views and what he said, but by and large, like Brexit stayed out of things. And I think football is inherently political, and I think footballers and football clubs and communities around the club have an obligation to be, if not political, at least community spirited. And I think we've lost so much of that in England. Again, like I'm not bashing Liverpool. I really have nothing against them. They're just a convenient example for this one. So Anfield, the stadium, a lot of the streets around the stadium have been bought up by Liverpool directly or indirectly through shell companies. Properties have been left empty, or properties have been purposely made expensive, and run down as well, like purposely run down. Like Thatcher gets a lot of shit for intentionally running Liverpool into the ground, but also like the club have, in one way or another, done that to the area that surrounds Anfield. They price people out. They've left properties empty, and it's also supposedly so Liverpool can expand into the surrounding area. And you know that when football becomes more of a business than a sport, I lose interest, and I think that's every day becoming more of an occurrence in England. And I hope that Venezuela restores some innocent love of the game that I once had. But I do love.
Very, very well said. You know, I like, and I did actually. So I visited Liverpool, Anfield in 2014 and in 2018. So I've seen kind of that what you're talking about, and so it is disappointing to see. And you know, I hope that your book can spark that love again for football. In case people are, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, again, we have everything linked in the video description if you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. We have it linked in the show notes. But in case people are just listening, where can they find you online, Jordan?
So my Twitter is the false libero, the false, and then libero's Libero. I do have a Facebook page for the book. It's just the title of the book, Red Wine Arepas: How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion. And then obviously the big one, the most important one, is the Kickstarter. Again, if you just search Red Wine Arepas in Kickstarter, it will pop up. But obviously, it's all linked. It's the pinned tweet on my Twitter feed, and I'd love people to get behind it. I can see whilst we've been online that I'm doing this through my phone. The notification bar at the top has popped up a few times. We have had some new backers. That's great. I'm looking forward to seeing how much of an impact that's made. But I don't want people to get behind this project unless they're interested. Obviously, I do want to hit my target. But I was having this discussion with my wife earlier in the week, or maybe last week. There could be a situation where I just ask family members and really close friends, can you back this project? If I get £5,000, I can write the book. But what's the point if I'm only producing the book for 10 people? I'd much rather this project fails because people weren't interested than it succeeding because a few people chucked a load of money into it. I want it to be genuine. I want people to genuinely want to buy this book and read this book. So yeah, I'd rather fail trying authentically than succeed on a falsity.
I love it. I love it. So, and I think that's very admirable, and I think that you will succeed. So anyone who is interested, again, the Kickstarter is linked in the video description and podcast show notes. Go support Jordan. Go support this awesome book. And yeah, Jordan, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
All right, listeners, viewers, thank you for being here. Jordan, I did want to relay a message here from Sal, who joined us online. So he said, I can't applaud Jordan enough for what you're doing. Venezuela is bad, and he is a Latin American. He sees the news from there, but he also knows it has its good sides and wonderful people. So I wanted to relay that message for you from Sal.
Thank you very much.
All right, Sal, have a great rest of your day. Jordan, thank you so much. Have a great day, too. And viewers, we'll talk to you soon. See ya.
Cheers.